Mom and Dad Are Fighting is brought to you by Progressive. Are you thinking more about how to tighten up your budget these days? Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and customers can qualify for an average of 6 discounts when they sign up. A little off your rate each month goes a long way. Get a quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, national annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts vary and are not available in all states and situations. This episode contains explicit language. Welcome to Mom and Dad Are Fighting, Slate's parenting podcast for Thursday, November 3rd, the Youth Sports Are Out of Control edition. I'm Elizabeth Newcamp. I write the homeschool and family travel blog, Dutch Goose. I'm the mom to 3 littles, Henry who's 10, Oliver who's 8, and Teddy who's 6. We live in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
I'm Zach Rosen. I make a podcast called The Best Advice Show, and I have 2 kids. My oldest Noah is 5, and my youngest Ami is 2. We live in Detroit.
I'm Jamilah Lemieux, a writer, contributor to Slate's Care Feeding Parenting column, and mom to Naima, who is 9.5, and we live in Los Angeles.
Today on the show, we're going to be talking about sports. Zach speaks with author Linda Flanagan about her book, Take Back the Game, which is all about how kids' sports have been transformed into a high-commitment, all-consuming, ultra-competitive space, and what big money has to do with it. Then on Slate Plus, we're talking about controversial people who have the power to influence our children's lives. You can sign up by going to slate.com/momanddadplus. Again, that's slate.com/momanddadplus. Okay, we're going to catch up on our week in parenting, but not before a quick break. See you back here in a second. Come to Etsy for thoughtful holiday gifts for all the people in your life. From friends to family, roommates to coworkers, you can find something special for everyone on your list on Etsy. Etsy has a wide range of extraordinary gifts, so you're sure to find the perfect presents. You can shop Etsy for fashion, decor, personalized gifts, and so much more. Discover presents that are both meaningful and for all budgets. When you shop on Etsy, you're shopping directly from makers, so every purchase supports a small business. New to Etsy? Use code MERRY10, that's MERRY 10 at checkout for 10% off your first purchase. That's code MERRY10. Maximum value of $50. Offer ends December 31st, 2022. See terms at etsy.com/terms. For gifts of all kinds, Etsy has it. Shop etsy.com.
Are you looking for a way to entertain your kids in the car? Or maybe just a way to wind them down before bed? Then you've got to try Pinna. Pinna is an audio streaming service just for kids that includes tons of podcasts, audiobooks, and more for ages 3 to 12. They offer some well-known stories and so many original podcasts and audiobooks for kids to enjoy. Plus, Pinna is a game changer for daily car trips to and from school or for weekend getaways. Not only will you as parents love listening, but the kids will be begging to turn on Pinna the second you step into the car. It's a routine they can look forward to, and it makes car rides more enjoyable for the whole family. Pinna is offering our listeners 1 year at $19.99 for a full access annual subscription, a savings of over $50. Just head to pinna.fm/promo to sign up and use code MOMANDDAD at checkout. That's PINNA.fm/promo.
All right, we're back. Jamilah, do you have a triumph or fail for us this week?
I have a fail. So last week was Halloween. I waited until Sunday to purchase candy for Naima to bring to school. To be fair, I wasn't sure. There wasn't any communication until maybe Thursday, and there was just an email that went out that said all candy that's sent in has to be in a sealed bag, but it didn't say you can send candy, it wasn't clear to me. And so I was like, I guess that means candy. And so I waited until Sunday to purchase candy. We went to this thing called Hauntoween in Sherman Oaks. It was one of those, I'd never been to one before because I'm not a suburb girl, but like a pop-up theme park not like a full out theme park, but like an experiential, like they had places where you could take pictures and some rides and bouncy houses, and they had trick or treating in there. It was like a Halloween experience thing. And we went with some of our friends and we went to dinner first. And so we had kind of a tight schedule on Sunday because we had like a specific time we had to be at Hauntoween. So I'm like, okay, we'll stop at the grocery store and get some candy. And so I'm like, hey, let's go to the bigger grocery store. And Naeem was like, we're going to Pavilion. We live near a Ralph's, if anyone's an LA person. And there's also a Pavilions not too far. And I was like, let's just go to Pavilions. It's bigger. They'll probably have a better candy selection because I'm like, it's the day before Halloween. People have stocked up. And so we go and they're like completely out. And now we're a little low on time. So I'm like, okay, well, we have time to stop at the Ralph's by our house. It's right there. I go in and there is one large bag of candy left. And it's like the biggest bag of candy ever. Maybe it was like 300 pieces or so, like 365 pieces. It was the only large bag left. And all they had left aside from that were like the bags that aren't that big. So you have to like buy 3 or 4 of them. Stuff like payday. Nobody wants paydays. Kids don't like paydays. So I'm like, okay, this is the last bag left. It was clearly meant for me. I'm so, I counted my blessings. I'm always so fortunate. I'm always so lucky. And I get to the register and this bag of candy costs $35.
For 360 pieces?
Yeah. So I guess in a way it might make sense. And I did read somewhere that like the price of fun-sized candy bars had gone up significantly with inflation this year. But it was the last bag left. So I was trapped. And so I purchased it thinking, well, at least I can eat some of this candy, like I'm going to take some of the Twix bars out. And then I looked again at the email from the school and it said that the bags have to be sent in sealed. So I got no parts of this candy, and Naima went to her dad's house on Halloween and trick-or-treated. So I didn't get any, I got played on candy. Half the reason I bought the big old bag, I was like, well, at least I know I can eat some. And I didn't get no candy.
No!
I only had one night worth of Halloween candy. It's so unfair.
I'll send you some of ours. We have some extra.
Maybe we should all sell it.
Seriously. Well, now it's worthless on November 1st.
I feel like, though, this isn't your failure. This is the universe failing you. Okay, Zach, triumph or fail for you?
I'm going to consider this a triumph. I don't know what came over me, but the other night, Noah and I were just laying in bed, and I asked her, I said, Noah, what could I do to be a better dad? And she thought about it, and she said, well, can you stop rushing me so much in the morning? You're always rushing me. I'm like, you're right. I totally rush you in the morning. And I was trying not to be like, it's because you can't get your fucking socks on. But so I really was like, not saying that. I was just like, okay, thank you. Thank you for telling me that. I appreciate the feedback. And can you not hit the table at dinner? That night at dinner, Shiro was gone. So it was just the three of us eating this frankly delicious mushroom soup that I made. And she got up and just started doing crafts at the other end of the table. I was like, Noah, we're eating right now. No response. Noah, come on, come back to your table. No response. And then the third, after not responding to me in 2 times, I hit the table pretty hard. I was like, Noah, come back and sit down. We're eating dinner. And that was too hard. Didn't need to hit the table like that. And she said, don't hit the table like that. So she gave me 2 very important pieces of data, daddy data. And it was nice. I think she felt, she just felt like, okay, this is like a symbiotic reciprocal relationship in which I don't just get told what to do and how to behave. I get to kind of give you feedback. And it was very sweet. And I recommend it.
In some, relationship thing Jeff and I went to, that was like the takeaway that I brought home with me to implement with Jeff is like asking, what's one thing I can do to make your day easier tomorrow? Just like what's one thing I can do? Like if we've had a hard day with the kids, I will ask them too. But it's like just asking for one thing that I can prioritize for this other person. And what I found is that when I ask them, eventually they start asking me, which I think is a nice thing, right? Like if I could just do one thing tomorrow to make you feel loved, what would that be? Which is essentially what you're saying, right? Like, hey, how can I do this dad thing better? And not that you have to take it, but at least then you have the data. So I think that's a wonderful way to just check in and make them feel, like you said, that it's reciprocal, that you are not perfect and you're open for suggestions too. One may be valid. The rushing thing is like, well, we're going to be late.
But also at the same time, it's like, okay, I can get her to school between 8:15 and 8:30. And if we get there at 8:31 or 8:28, doesn't matter.
At least knowing that she feels rushed too, right? Like the takeaway there is like, okay, this is creating a stressful situation.
Mm-hmm. What about you?
I'm taking a fail. I was traveling with the kids for 2 weeks. Jeff had a bunch of work stuff, and so I took them on kind of this whirlwind trip. Actually, my mom came and got Henry and took him to New York she had promised each of them that they could go on like a solo adventure with her for their 10th birthday. And of course, he turned 10 last spring, but due to scheduling, this was a good time to go. And what he wanted to do was go see a show on Broadway. And unbelievably, my mom was able to pull that off, and they saw a show there. He was great. I was very nervous because him traveling alone, you know, he has just like the medicines, and will they be able to manage, like if he does have kind of like a freak out. Everything went great. Meanwhile, I flew with the other two to Atlanta.
Wow.
Then we all joined my mom at a conference at Disney, including Henry. And so I had the three there. My dad was around to help, but fundamentally had 3 kids at Disney by myself. And the first day was a total disaster. We went to Epcot, and just so much crying and whining, running off ahead of things and complaining. And I never yelled, but I was very frustrated. And so as we were kind of waiting for the shuttle to take us back, I was thinking like, well, how could we do this better? And I realized that so much of it was I had not set us up for success, both in my mental thinking about this trip, because I'm thinking like, we lived in Florida and we thought we were going to take them to Disney a lot because we lived in Florida and it was right there. But then COVID happened, so we didn't. So this trip felt like, okay, it's making up for that. I want them to do all of these things. They're big enough now to ride roller coasters. They're like into this stuff. We need to do all of these things. They need to see all of these things. They need to experience it because we won't be back. Okay, they don't care about any of that. They just want to have fun. We're like in a fun place. They want to pick the stuff to do. I wanted to like get the good fun treats that I had read about and planned, not like what was available when they were hungry. I had made some meal reservations and they were at weird times. Like, I just did not set us up for success. And I realized that I was a huge part of the problem. So the next day I was just like, forget it. We just do what we do. And if we don't do any of the things, it's fine. We're just going to like go to the park. Second day was awesome. And that was a day in which my dad was with us for a little bit, but then had to go back to join my mom for some stuff. So I had the kids, the 3 of them at Magic Kingdom, super crowded because there's all this Halloween stuff going on. And at each park, I had told them there was one like homeschool activity that we were going to do. There's like a ride that's more educational, and they were like, cool. So we were going to go to the Hall of Presidents. And so we go to the Hall of Presidents and we sit down, and Henry, because he's 10, decides to sit like 3 seats away from me because I'm sitting with the other 2. And he's like, they're going to disturb my experience. I'm like, okay. The show is, I don't know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I don't know. So we sit down, there's robotic presidents. They are really great. And we'd had just like a really wonderful day. This is kind of towards the evening, and we were waiting for our last like fast pass or whatever they call it now to get to ride something. And they're asking questions, but they're being really quiet. Lights come up, show ends. I grab the 2 hands. I walk out. We get out, and Henry is not with us. We are out in the lobby. And here he comes running from the theater, screaming at me, I fell asleep and you left me in there. This other mom had to wake me up and make sure that I wasn't left in there. They're closing the park because it was like closing early for this Halloween party. And here's the thing. I absolutely left him. I never looked back. I thought, this kid is 10. He knows that we entered this way. We're walking this way. He wanted to sit by himself. The other mom was, waving at me. He was like, she had to shake me awake. And then I was just like, what treat can I buy you to make this better? And I did. We all got some kind of ridiculously overpriced cupcake. We ate it. We rode our last ride. We went home, and it was fine. We had the rest of the trip was great. But I legitimately just left him asleep in a theater.
This makes me think about a kind of macro dynamic of triumphs and fails. I feel like I offer more triumphs and you 2 offer more fails. And I think it's because, I think it has so much to do with men and women and y'all being harder on yourselves than you need to, and me being easier on myself than I probably need to. Like, you just took this whirlwind trip. You got 1 kid to go to a musical on Broadway. You fucking did Disney. Just getting through Disney is a triumph in itself. You weren't going to leave him at the park. This is more triumph than fail. And I think you need to be kinder to yourself. And Jamilah, you got the candy, dude. Triumph.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, fail here is that she didn't get any to eat.
Yes, that's the real fail. But you are right. And it's also it's Disney's fault for the Hall of Presidents being so boring.
And dark.
And dark. Why did you all go to it?
For educational purposes.
That was like my homeschool thing. Because each day I was like, we're going to do one thing. And the thing I picked there was like, we're going to go to the Hall of Presidents. We're going to like see the presidents, right? That's why we went to it. To make me feel like, yes, we are still homeschooling, even though we're at Disney. I mean, to be fair, my children asked people all about the forces of the roller coaster and like speeds. And I just was like, tell me you homeschool without telling me you homeschool. Like, whoops. But you're right. So what? He got a little nap.
See, another triumph.
Well, we're going to take another quick break. And then right after, we're going to jump into Zach's interview.
It's time to reboot your credit card with Apple Card. Apple Card gives you unlimited cash back every day on every purchase. It's real cash you can spend right away. No need to wait and wait for rewards. Apply now in the Wallet app on iPhone to see your credit limit offer with no impact to your credit score. Subject to credit approval. Daily cash is available via an Apple Cash card or as a statement credit. See Apple Card customer agreement for terms and conditions. Apple Cash card is issued by Green Dot Bank, member FDIC. Accepting an Apple Card after your application is approved will result in a hard inquiry, which may impact your credit score.
Myrtle Beach, South Carolina is the beach. It's also the perfect place to enjoy the holidays. Here, you get all the holiday cheer you can handle, plus 60 miles of beaches and endless fun. Sometimes you need a holiday from the standard holiday celebration. Maybe you want to escape the cold, or maybe you want to start a new tradition. There are themed shows all over the Grand Strand at storied venues like the Carolina Opry and the Alabama Theater. Winter Wonderland at the beach features massive light displays and a brand new family fun zone. Holiday cheer is everywhere you look, like at Brook Green Gardens' Night of 1,000 Candles, where more than 2,500 candles and twinkling lights take over the Grand Botanical Gardens. There aren't many places where you can celebrate the holidays or ring in the new year with an ocean view. This time of year is great for horseback riding along the shoreline, fishing from chartered boats or in the intracoastal waterways, and golfing at any of the 80-plus award-winning courses. Take a holiday from the average holiday season at the beach. Plan your getaway to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina at visitmyrtlebeach.com.
We're back. Zach recently spoke with Linda Flanagan about her book, Take Back the Game. Zach, can you tell us what we're about to hear?
Yeah, so Linda Flanagan is not only a journalist and an author, she also has a ton of experience as a coach. She coached cross country for 17 years. She raised 3 kids. So she has seen sports evolve from kind of all directions over the course of her life. And, particularly over the past couple decades, where she has just seen kids' sports just become kind of a disaster in so many ways. The seriousness with which parents and coaches take it, the amount of money that's made in kids' sports. Kids' sports is worth $19 billion, whereas the NFL is worth $15 billion. Like, kids sports is this crazy profitable industry. And so here it is. Can you describe some of the major differences between youth sports then to what they've become today?
When I was growing up, sports for me were going to the park and playing catch with my sisters. And games were, I started playing in a little rec league at the earliest I could. And that was like 6th grade. And that was like once a week, a game. We had like uniform shirts, nothing fancy. And, now it's transformed in middle and upper income areas. There's just more and more pressure to pick a sport at a young age and play that sport strictly, and to travel, to compete, to go to different, cities and even states sometimes to compete, sometimes against your neighbor, but you have to drive there to do it.
And what are some of the main drivers of this change?
Well, first is money. There's a ton of money in youth sports now that was never there before. Private investors have recognized that there's an appetite for it, that parents are eager to give their kids an advantage. Spending on parks and kind of public facilities has declined beginning in the 70s. And then they really fell off a cliff after the recession in 2008. So the private enterprise stepped in and has kind of flooded the market with private options, opportunities. And the message is always more is better, more strength training, more extra coaching, more special practice. So that's one is money. The second is a large cultural change about our responsibilities to our kids. This has shifted. And again, I always think about my parents and my generation, but we weren't the focal point of our parents' lives, my siblings and I was one of five. And while they certainly loved us and cared about us just as much as I care about my three kids, it was expressed differently. And that's a function of economic anxiety beginning in the 70s again. And there's just been a shift to a singular focus on kids. And we do everything for our kids because we're so nervous about how they're going to turn out and what is their future going to be like. And, anxiety is the driver. And the third factor quickly is colleges. All the changes, they're more expensive, they're more competitive, harder to get into. So it seems like sports are one way in.
In your book, Take Back the Game, I'm going to quote you. You write, "It's not the sports themselves that are flawed, but the way we do or don't deliver them to kids that's so costly. It's the arrangement we've allowed to develop with perverse incentives that celebrate excess and promote greed. It's a system, ad hoc, decentralized, with no one in charge, that forces parents of aspiring athletes into servitude." What do you mean by servitude?
There is pressure beginning in as young as second grade for kids to join travel teams. So what that means is you're going to be spending your weekends driving your children to other states sometimes, certainly an hour or more away, to compete. And regular practices, during the week, so that the child's sport becomes the dominating force. It only gets more intense as they get older. So it might start in second grade, but by the time they're in high school or middle school, even, your weekends, forget about your weekends, forget about your summers. There's just so much sacrifice and expected of parents in this.
When I was a seventh grade basketball player on a very mediocre team, I remember my coach broke a clipboard over his knee in the locker room during a halftime meeting. I'll never forget it. This is 25 years ago or something. I remember it like it was yesterday. To what extent is cruel coaching part of our culture in America?
Okay, that tells you something that you remember that. Like, you're not going to forget something like that because, wow, he's really upset. That's so typical. I mean, maybe that's a slightly extreme version, but variations of that are everywhere. There's like a special carve out for sports in our country where it's okay to be crazy. It's okay for coaches to be crazy, to be shrieking and yelling and breaking clipboards. And it's okay for parents to be crazy. It's excused as long as the coach is winning, and parents excuse it if their child is playing and if the child isn't complaining, or if they're complaining, they're only complaining a little. And anyway, look at your record. This is going to help you get into a better college. So we just kind of look the other way in a strange, I find it very strange when you consider what we expect of other people who work with kids. If teachers carried on like that, that just wouldn't be okay. But for some reason, we allow it in sports. And because we allow it, it happens.
Okay, I mean, right now you're talking to a bunch of parents, many of whom have kids in sports. What should they think about on their way to games or practice today?
Don't fixate on outcome. Focus on what your child is learning in the sport. There's more to focus on than the outcome. It's not only good for your child, it's good for you, because then you're not so like, did you win? Recognize, and it's a very big picture thing, is that to the extent that you can, it's to model an appealing adulthood. Because, we want our kids to look forward to growing up. And if you are rushing around like a mad woman or a madman and sacrificing your weekends and your summers, and all you do is talk about sports and, how frantic you are, and you're working and you're trying to juggle all this stuff, you're basically an indentured servant for your children's athletic career. Parents need to remember that their lives matter too, and that you can be a wonderful, loving, supportive parent and not do all of these crazy things.
That's fantastic. I love that. Is there anything else you want to say, Linda?
We should be encouraging exercise and movement and play as much as possible. It's great. It's great for kids. It's great for adults. So I don't, by any stretch of the imagination, mean to suggest that you should not encourage that, because activity is really important. It's about boundaries and proportion. That's the main point.
And that's it for our show. Make sure to join us on Monday because it's a special week. We'll be dedicating both episodes to friendship. We'll talk about how to help your kids navigate friendships. We also got a wonderful episode for parents on finding and keeping meaningful friendships. Be sure to tune in. While you're at it, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss an episode. If you're looking for a fun parenting community, don't forget the Slate Facebook parenting group. It's a great way to ask questions and get recommendations of your own. This episode of Mom and Dad Are Fighting is produced by Christy Taiwo Macanjula and Rosemary Belson. For Zach Rosen and Jamilah Lemieux, I'm Elizabeth Newcamp. Thanks for listening.